You already know what time it is. Welcome back into the NFL with AJL, episode 103. We're live a little bit earlier than usual on a Friday in the midst of the NFL draft happening very soon for day 2, rounds 2 and 3. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you're right here tapped in with us live on the show. Yes, I know episode 102 was pre-recorded. Still looking to explore that avenue possibly because I hate when the audio or the video cuts out on you guys. But nonetheless, we are back with episode 103. Of course, before we get started, y'all please make sure to like and share that stream wherever you may be watching. Subscribe on YouTube. Hit the bell so you never miss a post. Get in the chat. Get in the comments. I would love to engage and hear from you guys as the show goes on. And want to know what your input is on the NFL draft thus far. That QR code is every bit of social media and podcast content at NFL with AJL on all platforms. If you cannot find us, I promise you're simply not looking hard enough. Hope you had a blessed Easter season. Hope you are prepared for the summer and May as it is approaching so quick. Cannot get over how fast time moves as we get older, especially in the year of 2025. We got a packed one here on the show for you guys as we have our NFL draft first round reactions, the reaches, the steals of the first round, possibly some instant reactions from the second round, depending on what happens here as I'm recording live. The Saints pick Kelvin Banks at number 9, and Shedeur Sanders slips out of the first round, probably due to the slander. That was the word that I almost misspoke with there, but the slander has been laying on heavy for Shedeur, and we're going to explore it, talk about it some, have a great episode here. And again, I would love to see you guys in the chat and in the comments. Let's go ahead and get right into it with our NFL draft first round reactions and takeaways. The Jags come right out of the gates. They set the tone trading up for Travis Hunter in the draft, and the Jags sent this year's and next year's first, a second, and a fourth round pick to the Browns for this year's first, a fourth, and a sixth. This was actually the third time in the draft ever that an on-the-clock trade happened between two top 5 teams. And this was, a great move for Jacksonville. You get a two-way player in Travis Hunter. We know all of the information about him. You get a great weapon for Trevor Lawrence to go next to Brian Thomas Jr., and then you get a lockdown corner, one of the better prospects we've seen at the position in quite some time now. And yeah, you might feel like the haul is big when you send a first, a second, and a fourth to basically switch picks, and then you get a fourth and a sixth back. You said also another first round pick. So you basically gave up a first round pick, exchanged a second and a fourth, exchanged a fourth and a sixth. So you can kind of hash that out there. But when you look at a two-way prospect like Travis Hunter and what he brings to the table, being that unicorn, can you really put a correct price when you're on the clock top 5 and Travis Hunter is the pick potentially on the board? You're going to have to give it up. So I don't have a problem with the draft haul there. I was shocked that the Browns did not take a quarterback in the first round. I do expect them to take one at some point in the draft, though, whether it's tonight, which is the second and the third rounds, or tomorrow, which will be April 26th, on day 3, which will be rounds 4 through 7, of course. But I was shocked that they didn't take a quarterback. I was expecting possibly Shedeur Sanders. I was expecting, really Shedeur was the pick that I was expecting there, but it didn't happen. So we'll see what unfolds with the Browns. The Saints have Shedeur McMillan stolen right before them at pick number 8. And apparently that wasn't going to be the Saints guy, according to new head coach Kellen Moore. And the Panthers go in, they get a wide receiver, another weapon for Bryce Young, because they saw Bryce Young emerge as that number 1 pick that they picked him to be. He's got his confidence, his swagger, his play style back coming out of 2024. So they did get him more help. I thought that the Panthers were going to go defensive end. If you guys been keeping up with the show, you saw that I said the Panthers' first round draft target should have been a defensive end. But nonetheless, they end up going for Tet McMillan. And we saw the Saints last year had Brock Bowers stolen from them by the Raiders before they end up getting Taliesin Fuaga. Speaking of my New Orleans Saints, they make a boring but understandable pick with Kelvin Banks. We're going to have a whole conversation about this later, and to keep this segment from stretching much longer than it needs to be, we'll get into the full explanation later. But it was a boring but an understandable pick. The Saints did not have a great O-line last year. Now, yes, that was because of injuries, but I think this shows a little bit that they are buying into what they have in the quarterback room. I don't like it as a fan. I'm not really feeling Spencer Rattler, Jay Kaner. We know what's been going on with Derek Carr as well. The Saints have always built from the inside out. 10 of the last 12 years, they've drafted a lineman. 6 of the last 7 years, they've drafted an offensive lineman. A lot of the fans, and myself included, we wanted to see a sexy, flashy pick. I wanted Shedeur Sanders here. See a lot of people saying they wanted Jalen Walker or Mykel Williams. But the Saints have always built from the inside out. And, Kellen Moore felt like new coach, new regime, offensive minded outside the building, everything that we wanted to check on the box for the head coach. But Mickey Loomis said we're going to do the same thing that we've been doing. So I think that's why there's a lot of discrepancy about this pick from some of the fans for New Orleans. And the Saints actually did have a conversation with trading up with the Tennessee Titans in the first round. Wasn't anything real, but apparently from Adam Schefter, there was, quote, dialogue between the teams. So take for that what you will. Tennessee insisted on it, and they ended up going and just picking Cam Ward, which was the right thing to do. I think the Bears reached really, really hard on Colston Loveland. Are we live on YouTube? Yes, we are. Wait a minute. Okay. I was just making sure. Let me go check real quick. Sometimes I'm thinking about switching over from Restream to, okay, yeah, we are. I'm thinking about switching over from Restream to StreamYard. There's just a couple of things with this program that, as I've used it over a couple of years, I feel like it'd be some improvements. Anyways, I think the Bears reached pretty hard on Colston Loveland, especially at number 10. I think Tyler Warren was the pick here if you're going to go with tight end. And when you look at, I had Elijah Arroyo, I had Mason Taylor over Colston Loveland. So I do think this was one of the bigger reaches in the first round of the NFL draft. And I just think Tyler Warren would be much better for Caleb Williams and for that offensive identity and scheme that new head coach Ben Johnson is bringing to the table. The Atlanta Falcons absolutely won the first round of the NFL draft. They go and get Jalen Walker. They go and get James Pierce. Yes, you give up a first rounder for James Pierce, but James Pierce was the only other prospect in the draft that resembled what what Abdul Carter could bring to the table. James Pierce is going to be elite from day one, more than likely. He comes out of the SEC. We see the Falcons already comfortable early on picking another, elite defender in Jalen Walker out of the SEC. And then you combine this with Leonard Floyd as well. Just wait for that Falcons pass rush and defensive line to really be something to deal with. And the Falcons do send the second and the seventh rounder also, of course, next year's first to go up and get James Pierce. It is a little steep because you feel like when you get James Pierce at, 23rd, 26th, y'all don't crush me on that, but I know that they traded back into the first to get James Pierce in the 20s. There's a chance he would have been available at day 2. I don't know what the Falcons' actual day 2 draft picks are. I'll actually go take a look real quick just so I can be a little more versed on that. The Falcons don't have a second round draft pick, actually, looks like, probably because they traded it away last night. So they felt like James Pierce was the guy that they had to go and get, and I respect it. Again, a lot of people are trashing this pick. But when you look at the 4 of the last 6 years, the Atlanta Falcons have been the bottom 2. So we're either the worst or the second to worst team in the NFL in sacks. It's been an issue. If you look at Grady Jarrett, if you look at Vic Beasley in the past, maybe a little bit of Tack McKinley. Yeah, you got some players there, but the Falcons have never really had a true edge rusher like when they passed on a Dallas Turner in the past and other multiple prospects that I thought that they should have went and got a defensive line. They didn't. They've been heavy in free agency and, just in the offseason, but not in the draft. They go get 2 premier linebacker / edge and edge rusher and James Pierce and Jalen Walker. I think they absolutely stole the first round of the draft. This is great for Atlanta. I think they're going to be getting after the passer at a high level this coming year. They've already got some solid guys on the linebacking core and within the secondary as well. I thought they were actually going to get Will Johnson right here. As a Saints fan, hate to see it, but I'm glad we got Taliesin Fuaga and Kelvin Banks to put up with these guys on the pass rush. I was really shocked that Shedeur Stewart went over James Pierce to the Bengals. I really felt like James Pierce was the perfect pick to go to Cincinnati. I feel like he resembles a little bit of Trey Hendrickson, can bend, can be really finesse, great technique, can get out of the way and just flat out get to the quarterback. Would have been a great compliment. Shedeur Stewart, still solid. Didn't have him in my top 5. Y'all might think that's crazy. I had Jack Sawyer, Nick Scorton over him. Obviously, Michael Williams. Y'all probably think that's crazy within itself. But I was shocked that Shedeur Stewart, instead of James Pierce, went to the Bengals. When you look at the fact that the Bucs got Emeka Egbuka, Mike Evans, and now Chris Godwin. Oh, my goodness. That is a insane receiving core. I had Emeka Egbuka as the number 1 receiver coming into the draft. I just like his play style better, not taking anything away from Ted McMillan. Excuse me. But Emeka Egbuka is going to be insane in this offense. He could be the one. Mike Evans could be the one. Chris Godwin could be the one at any time. More help for Baker Mayfield, of course. It shows that they're planning for the future, though. Mike Evans at 31, Chris Godwin is 29. They're both still playing at a high level. They're both still one of the better, wide receiver duos in the NFL. But Emeka Egbuka here, great pick. I love it. Was a little surprised by it, but I'm not going to be mad about it at all. Jahdae Barron and Patrick Surtain are going to fit perfectly together in Denver. They're going to be contending for the best secondary and, one of the better, if not the best defenses in the NFL. They're going to have something to say to the Philadelphia Eagles about what they're building over there. Jahdae Barron was the Thorpe, I want to say is the Jim Thorpe winner. Yeah, because Biletnikoff is a receiver. Jim Thorpe Award winner, voted as the best defensive back in the country. Loved what he brought to the table on tape. It was him, it was Travis Hunter, it was Will Johnson. Obviously, Travis at 1, Jahdae Barron probably at 2, Will Johnson at 3. So, great technique at the corner position, and just what a pick to go on the other side of Pat Surtain. Amarian Hampton and Najee Harris, I think, are going to be a really solid 1-2 punch. Now, I thought Dylan Sampson or maybe even Travion Henderson could have went here. I just personally like those two running backs over Amarian Hampton. I didn't see a lot of people talking about Dylan Sampson. I think Dylan Sampson is going to be very good in the National Football League. But we saw, Amarian Hampton on everybody's draft boards as RB1 or RB2. I personally think he was outside of the top 5. At highest I saw him was RB2, but I don't know how you say he was better than Ashton Jeanty. But him and Najee Harris are going to be a solid 1-2 punch. Jordan Love finally has a legit, surefire, proven wide receiver 1. Finally. No more Dontavian Wicks. No more Jaden Reed. No more Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, injuries here and there, inconsistencies. Can they really mesh with the offense? No. You just went and got Matthew Golden, who is an absolute speedster, can flat out fly out of Texas, and played as well as he did with Quinn Ewers as his quarterback. Now he is with Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur in Green Bay with one of the better franchises in the NFL. And Jordan Love finally has, this feels like the best wide receiver maybe that Jordan Love's had the opportunity to throw to. I mean, seriously. I don't think he got the chance to throw to Devontae Adams. If he did, please excuse my ignorance, but I want to say Devontae Adams was already gone. So Jordan Love getting Matthew Golden is going to be great. They're going to be one of the top connections in the league. I personally cannot wait to see what happens with the fit with this team. Very happy for Jordan Love. Matthew Golden as the number 1, if not number 2 receiver, number 3, top 3 receiver into class for sure. He landed in a great spot. What a New York Giants thing it was to do to trade back into the first round for Jackson Dart. Kind of copying the Houston Texans from a couple years ago, not nearly landing the type of player and quarterback CJ Stroud to Jackson Dart, because we see a few years ago at 2 and 3, you go CJ Stroud, you go Will Anderson. And then this year at, what was it? Was it 3? They pick a 3? At 3, you go Abdul Carter. At 26, it was. You go Jackson Dart. Was not a fan of this pick. I really wasn't. You trade a second and 2/3 to move up to get Jackson Dart. I had Jackson Dart as a number 5 quarterback coming into the class. I do feel like I'm underrating him and sleeping on him a little bit because he did play in the SEC. He is the 4th ever player in SEC history to have 12,000 all-purpose yards as a player. But I just didn't like him being picked here. I didn't think he was worthy of a first-round pick. I don't think he is a real, true passer of the football, an efficient reader of defenses. And I think he's getting a lot of hype because of that Georgia win, which I watched every snap of that game. Jackson Dart looked good in that game. He did. I'm not going to lie to you. But I don't think that made him worthy of a first-round pick. I don't think it did for him what it did for CJ Stroud when CJ Stroud played against Georgia before the national championship. And CJ Stroud elevated himself to the top of the draft like that. Yeah, people already had him high on their draft boards, but he went number 2 because of that. And clearly Jackson Dart was able to jump back into the first round because of kind of a similar situation. I don't agree. This is one of the bigger reaches of the draft to me. The Giants wanted to go and get Cam Ward. They offered the 3rd overall pick, next year's first, and quote, a bunch of other picks or a slew of other picks that probably consisted of another first. Because you got to think, if you're trading up to number 1, it's probably going to cost you 2 firsts, if not a first and 2 seconds, 2/3, something like that. But if you're on the clock, I can only imagine what it would really cost you. So, for the sake of conversation, because I think everyone could agree, the Giants were willing to go to number one for this year's first, next year's first, and probably the first the following year to go get Cam Ward. So, I can't blame them for that. If you think Cam Ward is that type of talent, then go and get him. By all means, I do think Cam Ward was that good, so I got respect for the Giants for wanting to possibly do that. I do hate to see Will Johnson fall out of the first round due to injuries, his knee, and I think he had some other wrist injuries as well that a lot of people were kind of worried about. I did think Will Johnson was one of the best corners in the draft, right there next to Shedeur Barron. Not as good as Travis Hunter though, and I really hate to see him fall out of the first round. Whoever gets Will Johnson is getting a great corner. I've had rumors of my Saints being able to get him. The Saints were possibly going to go get him at 9. Now he is going to be a day 2 and on pick. He's going to be a lockdown corner in the league. Coming out of the University of Michigan, I think he had 3-4 pick sixes in his Michigan career. Both of his interceptions last year in just 6 games. Both of those went 4 touchdowns. I don't believe he gave up a touchdown in coverage. If he did, it was only 1, maybe 2. I'm trying to recall some of the numbers that I ran through for Will Johnson when we covered him as a prospect earlier on the channel, earlier in the offseason. But I really hate to see Will Johnson fall out of the first round here. And, again, whoever gets him is going to get a really good player. I think the Bills reached pretty hard on Maxwell Hairston. He had the fastest combine time, I think at a 4.29. I would have liked Trey Amos or maybe even Ben Morrison here. Maxwell Hairston is a good corner, but I just don't think he compared to some of the other guys. Like I had Trey Amos at 4. I had Ben Morrison at 5, Shedeur at 3. Shedeur at 2, Will at 3, Travis Hunter at 1. So I just thought there were some other corners that could have went here. But, again, whoever picks up Trey Amos and Ben Morrison are going to get some very solid corners there. The Eagles did go and draft another premier SEC defensive player. No surprise there. They go and get Jahad Campbell. And I liked how they traded with KC, kind of like a middle finger move. Like, hey, we just beat your ass in the Super Bowl. Now I'm about to trade up in front of you and get a premier player. Kansas City was probably going O-line anyways, but to get a player of the caliber of Jahad Campbell out of Alabama, one of the top players at his position, and only give up a 5th rounder and swap just one spot back to steal him, or one spot forward to steal him from Kansas City, I kind of just thought it was a big FU move, which is cool. I've got no problem with it. Wait for Howie Roseman to rub it in and just keep the defeat of the Super Bowl still going along. Again, I think the Atlanta Falcons were 100% the first round winners of the NFL drafts. Let's talk about some steals and reaches and then get to a couple more topics here. I thought the biggest steals of the draft were James Pierce and Jahad Campbell. I didn't expect either one of them to fall as far as they did. I thought Ibuka went pretty late in the draft as well, with him being my number 1 receiver, an elite guy. I thought Golden falling to 23 within itself was crazy. And then Shedeur Barron, he probably was mocked around the spot he was in, but for him to go first round and then also for him to go of all teams to the Broncos, just thought it was an absolute steal. Some of my reaches here in the first round of the 2025 NFL draft: Colston Loveland, y'all heard me talk about that with the Bears. Maxwell Hairston as well. I would have rather had either Elijah Arroyo, Mason Taylor over Colston Loveland at 10 for the Bears for the tight end position, or Trey Amos, Ben Morrison from Maxwell Hairston instead of rather for the Bills taking Maxwell Hairston. Of course, I talked about Jackson Dart, and then Shamar Stewart also being reaches as well. This has been episode 103 of the NFL with AJL. Appreciate everybody jumping in a little earlier than we usually go on a Friday night, as we are dead in the midst of NFL draft season. Y'all, please make sure to like and share that stream wherever you may be watching. Subscribe on YouTube, hit the bell so you never miss a post, and that QR code / the link down in the description is every bit of social media and podcast content. If you can't find us, I promise you're simply not looking hard enough at NFL with AJL. You can donate in the comments on YouTube with a super chat, a super thanks. There's a super something else in there. You could donate to the show. Would greatly appreciate that if that comes across your mind. DM me on social media if you would like to contribute to the show as well. We're sponsored still and will forever be by Buy and Sell with AJL for all your worldwide professional real estate needs. Buying a home, selling a home, or investing in real estate, this is the team that you need to be working with. Get on their monthly neighborhood market reports. Get on their monthly newsletter. Attend their monthly real estate meetups. So much value with this real estate team. It is not like your ordinary real estate agent, realtors, real estate services out there. Truly an experience to work with these guys if you have real estate goals. Buy and Sell with AJL. And of course, we are continuing our partnership with HyperX hyperx.com, code AJL. That's hyperx.com, code AJL, like NFL with AJL, for 15% off of your order. You get some headphones, you get a keyboard, you get a microphone, you can get a mouse. If you're looking for some equipment for gaming or podcasting, whether you're starting up or you're a veteran, this is the place to also check out. Thank you, hyperx.com, for being a sponsor of the show. Again, code AJL for 15% off at checkout. And if you want to know about some more deals possibly with HyperX, please DM me at NFL with AJL on social media. And I'll be sure to hook you guys up. The New Orleans Saints ended up picking Kelvin Banks at number 9 in the 2025 NFL draft. And my in-the-moment reaction, I was like, okay, it was a position we needed, clearly. I think the Saints and their fans, really the fan base, we were expecting the flashy pick, the Shedeur Sanders, the Jalen Walker, the Tet McMillan if he was there. Hell, I wouldn't have cared if we went and got a Mecca Ibuka. Just someone of skill position. Y'all, excuse me, I'm sorry. Someone of skill position. But Mickey Loomis showed us that he's still doing some of the same things and running it back. 10 out of the last 12 years, the Saints have drafted a lineman. 6 out of the last 7 years, the Saints have drafted an offensive lineman. So this is what the Saints are going to continue to do, build from the inside out. We saw the reports leak that Kellen Moore and Mickey Loomis aligned from you build from the inside out. Clearly that shows that they did not value a quarterback at number 9, whether that was Dart, whether that was Shedeur, whether that was Tyler Shuck. I don't really know, but that does show that the Saints did not value a quarterback at number 9, which, again, I really wanted Shedeur Sanders, but it is what it is. My in-the-moment reaction, I wasn't really pissed. I was just like, okay, we don't – here we go again, taking another offensive lineman just makes guys like Chris Olave feel really, really special that we've taken him when we did. I feel like I've watched the Saints draft a lineman every year, literally 10 out of the last 12 years. That's what they've drafted. But after I slept on the reaction, after I let it soak in, it's not a sexy pick. It's a boring pick, but it's needed. And Kelvin Banks was voted as the best offensive lineman in college football. He was a unanimous All-American. He gave up 4 sacks in his career at Texas, 2 of them as a freshman. So basically 2 sacks given up in the last 2 years. I've got it right here for you guys. 2 sacks given up in the last 2 years, 3 quarterback hits allowed, 1,043 pass block snaps, and a 2.1 pressure rate allowed as well. So I had Kelvin Banks as the best offensive lineman. No, I didn't go through him as a prospect on the channel, but I had Kelvin Banks as the best offensive lineman in the draft. The Saints saw him. Kellen said this was the guy that they had at the top of their list, and they went and took him. Again, it's not sexy. It's boring as hell. I wanted to get an edge rusher. I wanted to get a wide receiver. Hell, if for some reason we would have taken Ashton Jeanty, I might have been pissed off about it, but just something other than a staple pick. But this shows they're clearly buying into a quarterback that they have on the roster, or they're going to go get one on day 2 or day 3. Shedeur could still be in play. Jackson Dart is off the board. Do they go get Tyler Shuck? I'm not really sure. But whoever we have, they have to be protected. They have to be upright. Maybe because they picked this guy out of Texas that it's going to convince Arch Manning to come over next year, even though he's not coming out of the draft. Look, I don't know, right? But when you pick an elite lineman like this, and now you got Kelvin Banks on one side, Taliesin Fuaga on the other side, we've got our tackle tandem for the next 5 to 10 years in New Orleans. I mean, this could be another Ryan Ramczyk to Ron Armstead type of thing, which I think all Saints fans would love again, because when we had those 2 guys anchoring the line, we had arguably the best offensive line in the NFL, and there were quite a few years we were top 3, top 5, even top 10 in rankings, that we would take it. So, yeah, I would have loved to go get another skill position, but this just, it shows you. And we still got tons of talent left on day 2. There's still a burden. Luther Burden and Isaiah Bond out there for the wide receiver position. Shedeur is still on the board. There's an edge rusher out there by the name of Jack Sawyer, Nick Scorton, that could go tonight in the draft for the Saints as well. So we'll really, just have to see. I'm actually going to pull the draft up right here on my phone just in case Shedeur Sanders gets taken, because we're about to get right into the Shedeur Sanders topic. Here we go. I think it literally just started. Glad I was able to get this show in for you guys before the second day of the NFL draft did kick off It was a solid draft, man. I enjoyed watching it. I love when the draft comes around every year because there's so much speculation and you see so many mock drafts and where are these guys really valued at. And the draft is just a special time of the year, man. I mean, it really is. If you love football to its core, you understand what the NFL draft means to the sport of football between college and between the National Football League. No question about it. As of right now, 7:01 p.m. on April 25th, 2025, we are walking into the second round of the NFL draft, and Shedeur Sanders is still on the board. It's really the Browns, the Steelers, the Saints, and the Rams that are going to have a chance at getting Shedeur Sanders. In the second round, the Browns pick first and fourth overall in the second round. The Saints pick 8th. The Rams pick 14th. In the third round, Browns are on a clock currently. The Browns pick third in the third round. The Steelers pick 19th. The Rams 26th. The Saints 29th. And then the Browns 30th. So the Browns, if it's up to them, they've got 4 chances between the second and the third round to go get Shedeur Sanders. There's 9 chances for Shedeur Sanders to realistically get drafted on day 2 of the NFL draft. I would love to see my Saints go and get him. Y'all already know how I feel about that. But I think realistically, the Steelers or the Rams would probably be the best fits for Shedeur Sanders. When you look at the Steelers, you've got a great defense to help you out. So you're covered there, something that Colorado struggled with a little bit until his final year. Your offensive line has solid pieces on it. You've got DK Metcalf and you've got George Pickens as well. So you've got talent. When you look at the Browns, it's very, very tough to find what you like with the Browns. The Saints, we know, are a bare roster. Do they have some weapons? Yes, but they have question marks with injuries at a lot of positions, and they're still building up the offensive line. When you look, and a great coach in, you could argue all 4 spots are solid. Kellen Moore, as of right now, we don't know, but he'll hopefully be a good head coach. Sean McVay, very well respected. Mike Tomlin, polarizing head coach, but he's very well respected. And then Kevin Stefanski with the Browns, 2-time coach of the year. And then when you look at the Rams, Sean McVay, obviously. You've also got Puka Nacua. You have Devontae Adams. You have not Kyron Lacey. God rest his soul. So sorry. Did not mean to disrespect you like that. God rest your soul, Kyron. Praying for you, your family, everyone that was involved with what happened to you. That was just a very shocking story. Kyron Williams is there. Very solid offensive lineman. You've got Jared First. You've got Braden Fisk. You have a great organization to go to with the Rams. Being able to learn from Matthew Stafford would be so elite and so great for Shedeur Sanders' career. Nobody really to learn from with Pittsburgh. So, when you start to peel this onion back and look at the Shedeur Sanders story, the Rams are the best spot for him, arguably. And y'all know I would love for the Saints to go and get him. But it is very clear what the National Football League, the execs, the GMs, the coaches, what they think of Shedeur Sanders. They clearly do not view him. Sorry, I keep looking down. I keep looking at the draft right here because it's pulled up in front of me. They do not value Shedeur Sanders as a first-round quarterback. They clearly didn't. The NFL and the draft and everybody involved that was making the picks did not believe Shedeur Sanders was a first-round pick. At least that's what we've seen 32 times over. Okay? We've seen players slip like this. Brett Favre, Johnny Manziel, a couple of other players as well. When it comes down to the Aaron Rodgers, when it comes down to your attitude, your interviews, that's what we heard a lot about with Shedeur Sanders. Because we know he's confident, he's cocky at times, he believes big time in his skills, which there's nothing wrong with that. And that out of it as much as I can, but he is literally just like Deion Sanders. He maneuvers a lot like Deion Sanders, which is fine, right? Like, I respect it. Don't budge. I think it was Emmanuel Acho said on, I think it's the facility that he's on, Shedeur Sanders didn't change his code to be what other NFL, people wanted him to be. No, he didn't. And honestly, I'm glad he didn't. Shedeur Sanders is really starting to give me a little bit of this Jalen Hurts era, this Jalen Hurts vibe, like coming out of college. Obviously Shedeur wasn't second in Heisman voting like Jalen was, really blowing up. But like a lot of people see who he is as a player. The consensus on him is like, we know that he's good, but we're still going to doubt him. We're still going to let him slip. Jalen didn't have attitude problems, and it's not that Shedeur has attitude problems but the whole chip on the shoulder, he's good, but he's slipping in the draft for these weird reasons. Like it kind of does remind me some of the Jalen Hurts type of just situation and attitude and mantra that it brings to the table. So it's going to be interesting to see where Shedeur Sanders goes. I think he's a first round pick. He could have went number 1 overall. Don't know if he's worthy of that much. I would have loved for the Saints to take him at 9. I just really would have, especially with the Derek Carr news. But it is very clear that the NFL does not view Shedeur Sanders as a first round quarterback, which is crazy, right? I said if the Saints didn't draft him, it could be one of the biggest mistakes in franchise history. I still stand on that because I think Shedeur is going to be really good in the NFL. And I think if he's put in the right situation, like we can say with a lot of players, right, he can be a Super Bowl winner. He can be an MVP. He can be that pivotal piece on an offense and go down in history as one of the better quarterbacks. I don't think he's a huge Hall of Famer or, a guy that's going to sweep the league, but like Shedeur Sanders has what it takes to be a winner. I understand the times at Colorado did not necessarily show that, and I understand what his, interviews bring to the table and the reports of it was the worst formal interview I've ever sat in on. The tape doesn't lie. My eyes don't lie to me, and I love what Shedeur Sanders brings to the table. I really do. So it'll be interesting to see where Shedeur Sanders goes. Again, Browns, Saints, Rams, and Steelers. I think it's down to the Steelers and the Rams. Of course, I would love for my Saints to take him, but I think the Rams would be the best spot really here for Shedeur Sanders. Rams are not on the clock yet. They pick 14th. So what is that? 47th, and then they also 47th overall, 14th in the second round specifically, and then they pick 26th in the third round as well. You guys get in the chat, get in the comments. Thank you for tuning in and let me know what you thought of this episode of the NFL with AJL. We banged this one out pretty quick, 31 minutes. Love you guys, and I appreciate you guys. Before we get out of here, please make sure to like and share that stream wherever you may be watching. Subscribe on YouTube. Hit the bell so you never miss a post. That QR code in the corner of the screen is every bit of social media and podcast content. If you can't find me at NFL with AJL, you're simply not looking hard enough. Check the description as well for our sponsor links. Check the description as well for all of our information to be able to follow the podcast. We will be back with episode 104. We're going to go tap into rounds 2 and 3, day 2 of the NFL draft. I love you guys. I need you guys. And I will see y'all in the next